Um, very good morning to you colleagues, those who are physically present here and those who are online. I would like to take this opportunity to welcome all of you. Is this working? Okay. I'd like to take this opportunity to welcome all of you to Mr. Denis, to Mr. Denis Tushabomwe's defense, PhD defense today. Where is Denis? Okay. Okay. Denis, congratulations for making it up to this point, and we are all indeed looking forward to learning more about your work. Denis Tushabomwe comes to us from the Department of Development Studies, Makerere University, where he is an assistant lecturer. The title of his study is The Impact of Agricultural Market Liberalization and Commercialization on Gender Relations in Uganda's Smallholder Crop Value Chains, a case of white potatoes in Rubanda district. He was supervised by Dr. Lawyer Kafureeka, who is not with us here physically because he's up country, but he promised to join online, and I will be confirming with Professor Farouk if Dr. Kafureeka is with us online. His second supervisor was Dr. David Mugambe Mpiima, who is with us here. And Dr. Mpiima, we thank you for walking the journey with the candidate up to this level. I'd like to introduce the panelists today. We have Professor Florence Muhanguzi, who should be joining online, or who is online because she's out of the country. We have Dr. Dick Kamganga Nuamanya from the Department of Development Studies, Dr. Ria Seraja from the Department of Development Studies, and Professor Helen Nambali-Rankavala from the Department of Religion and Peace Studies, Professor Veneranda Mbabazi from the Department of Religion and Peace Studies, Dr. Julius Mugisa from Women and Gender Studies. I hope I pronounced that correct. Okay. Okay, I got it. Thank you. All right. Okay. And then I would like to introduce the most important person without whom this defense cannot proceed, and that is our critical reader, Dr. Richard Asaba Bagonza from the Institute of Gender and Development Studies. Please join me to welcome the panelists and our independent reader. Colleagues, join me to welcome the panelists and our independent reader. Thank you very much. So we shall proceed as follows. We shall give the candidate up to between 30 to 40 minutes, but if you can use less, that will be great. And then we shall give the critical reader up to 60 minutes to engage with the candidate, but if he can also do it in less than that, we shall still be happy. And then our examination panel will have up to 30 minutes, and then we'll open up to the public for questions. And thereafter, the examination panel will retreat to take a decision. So before I invite Denis to take us through his work, I I would like to acknowledge the presence of the principal of the College and Humanities and Social Sciences. Principal, we are very happy to have you here in the different capacities. We know you're very busy, and so we don't take it for granted when you make time to be here with us and wish us the best. I would also like to acknowledge the presence of the head of Department of Development Studies, Dr. Resti Naiga. Dr. Resti Naiga, thank you very much for making time to join us and see what we do. And lastly, for now, I would like to acknowledge the presence of the chair, Makerere University Academic Staff Association. Yes, the chair is here with us. Dr. Kakuru, thank you for making time to be here. And lastly, to thank you all members in the audience for making time to come and witness Denis share his work with us. So without further ado, I would like to invite the candidate to take us through his work. Denis.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, everyone. My study was titled The Impact of Agricultural Market Liberalization and Commercialization, the Gender Relations in Uganda, Smallholder Group Value Chains. I used the case of white potatoes in Rubanda district. First of all, the motivation that led me to take this study. In June 2014, I had an opportunity to participate in a training on rural entrepreneurship, driving innovations in agri-food value chains at Wageningen University, the Netherlands. And subsequent, following this training, I participated in two SNV-supported projects. That's the project of profiling gender diary business cases in the central and eastern Uganda, and the project of evaluation of pineapple value chains in central and western Uganda. These accomplishments brought me to the realization that increasing smallholder commercialization, that there was increasing smallholder commercialization, and it rose the curiosity to understand why and the possible effects on gender relations. The study used some key terms: gender relations, defined as the mutually constitutive, symbolic and material relations of power and authority between men and women in households and extra-household contexts. Smallholder farmers, as farmers are occupying up to 2 hectares, that is according to the sub-Saharan standard. As Conway puts it, agricultural value chains as activities required to bring a product from inception or conception through the different stages to the final consumer, and commercialization as processes involving transition from subsistence to market-oriented production, largely characterized by use of hired labor and land, sourced inputs, and bulk production. Background, the study that over the recent 3 decades, countries in the global south have been liberalizing their economies and implementing agricultural-based reforms. The reforms aimed at addressing the challenges that characterized the pre-1980 period that contributed to low production in agriculture and stagnation. The reforms therefore aimed at enhancing enhancing smallholder production and transformation. Uganda implemented agriculture sector specific reforms between 1991 and 1996 under the agriculture sector specific facility. The reforms were expected to enhance smallholder engagement with the private sector, enhance incentives and access to wider markets. And these are viewed as hallmarks to commercialization. To further enhance transformation of smallholder agriculture, the value chain approach has been adopted since mid-2000s, and it has targeted promoting production, enhancing farmers' incomes, and well-being generally. Smallholder value chains are embedded in social cultural structures, which are a collection of norms, beliefs, and these tend to influence gender relations, but largely disadvantaging women. For example, according to LandNet, due to cultural norms and structural barriers, only 16% of women own land. Agricultural market reforms are not gender neutral. They tend to alter gender relations. But these reforms take 10 to 15 years to produce significant impact at the micro level. The study's argument, therefore, is that although implemented decades ago, liberalization reforms have catalyzed smallholder commercialization, impacting present-day gender relations. The study, therefore, is situated in the long-term trajectory of agricultural transformation influenced by liberalization reforms and commercialization. Problem statement: liberalization reforms were adopted to incentivize production and integrate smallholder farmers into more competitive markets. Although the reforms have led to increased commercialization and transformed production structures and value chains, their gendered consequences remained inadequately understood. Reforms were undertaken with the assumption that the resulting incentives would scale up smallholder value chains, leading to equal benefits for men and women. However, evidence, for example, Okonya shows continued women's constrained participation attributed to norms and real expectations. The reforms, however, have the potential to alter these norms, but the extent to which they have configured gender relations and power dynamics within smallholder farming households remained unclear. The study therefore examined the impact of the reforms and subsequent commercialization on gender relations in smallholder value chains, focusing on Rubanda district. The principal objective was to examine the impact of agricultural market reforms and subsequent shift towards commercialization or commercial-oriented production on gender relations in smallholder value chains, focusing on white potatoes in Rubanda district. Specifically, the study aimed to establish the forms of value chains that have emerged, to map the changes in gender roles in households and across the various potato value chain nodes, to examine the impacts of the reforms and commercial-oriented production on gender power relations in households, and lastly, to assess the gendered effects of the reforms on financial benefits. The study was guided by two theories, that's the value chain theory and the outcome-focused bargaining theory. The value chain theory was first introduced by Porter to analyze competitiveness in farms, but it was later extended by scholars such as Gerefi to agricultural value chains. It argues that value chains are comprised of different activities and actors, and focuses on how value is created, distributed, and also on value chain governance. The theory was applied to analyze the effects of the reforms on the gender division of labor and participation across the various nodes of the potato value chain. However, the theory has one limitation, that it's strong in analyzing gender participation and weak in analyzing gender power dynamics. And to fill this gap, the study adopted the outcome-focused bargaining theory, which was first introduced by Nash to analyze the outcomes of bargaining between two rational individuals, but later extended by Sen and Aguar to intra-household and extra-household contexts. It contradicts Baker's conceptualization of a household as a unitary entity, and according to Baker, households are comprised of two individuals, but the decisions are made by one individual. But the value chain, the bargaining theory argues that households are comprised of more than one individual with different interests, and argues that decision making is undertaken through bargaining. But who bargains and bargaining over what? According to Dorsey, bargaining is undertaken by two individuals, that's husband and wife, and it's done over resources, meaning the land, household of family labor, farming equipment, and outputs. Bargaining theory is two-dimensional. It has comprised of the process, that is the how, and the outcome, or the what. So the theory used the outcome-focused analysis, or the what, to establish the effects of the reforms on gender relations, specifically resource access, management, and control over income. Conceptual framework, liberalization reforms were adopted to transform smallholder production, but the reforms have over time driven increased commercialization. This commercialization, together with global market forces, have led to alteration of existing value chains, giving birth to new forms of value chains. Saplasak argues that commercialization tends to integrate smallholder farming households into input and output markets and wider value chain systems. And this is indicated by the dotted double feed loop, showing household members' participation in value chains as sources of livelihoods. Value chains are further embedded in broader contexts of communities and markets, and these are comprised of rules and norms and other forces that influence gender relations, which is this study's interest. Methodology, the study used a mixed methods approach involving qualitative and quantitative data strands, and this approach was informed and grounded in the pragmatism paradigm. But why pragmatism? Pragmatism because it allows use of ideas gleaned through perspectives from positivism and constructivism, and therefore use of both qualitative and quantitative data. The study used a mixed, a sequential explanatory design involving two phases. The first focusing on quantitative data, and the second on qualitative data. And the first one involved methods such as surveys, document reviews, while the second utilized in-depth interviews, key informant interviews, focused group discussions, and field-based observations. The study was conducted in Rubanda, but why Rubanda? Rubanda because it has the highest level of potato production, that's according to UBOS. And why potatoes? Potatoes because they are prioritized for commercialization and agro-industrialization in the NDP3 and the agricultural sector specific, the agricultural you'll excuse me there, the target population, primary target population were potato farmers. The inclusion and exclusion criteria was that farmers growing potatoes in the pre and post reform period were included, while the exclusion rule was that persons aged 40 years were excluded for lack of pre-reform knowledge and experience, while those aged 90 years were excluded for memory lapses. Also excluded were members of households that were found to have been widowed by the impact year. But which year is this? As earlier stated, that reforms take 10 to 15 years to produce impact on the ground. That's according to Daudi, and that the agriculture sector specific reforms were implemented in 1991. So 1991 plus 15 years gave me 2006, and this was used as the impact year, marking the boundary between the period before and after market reforms. Sampling and sample size determination. For quantitative data, I used the Yamani formula as indicated, which was applied to a population of 15,623 households. And this gave a sample size of 155 households, from which 201 respondents were selected. Multi-stage sampling was applied to select farming households. That is, purposive sampling was used to select sub-counties and parishes basing on the information provided by the district production and marketing office, while for villages I used the simple random sampling, and systematic sampling select households on the ground basing on the lists provided by the local council one chairpersons. These lists provided a sampling frame. The unit of analysis for the study were individual farmers, that is men and women, that are principal decision makers in households. The focus of analysis was gender relations. For qualitative data, purposive sampling was used to select key informants in the interview respondents and focus group discussions. Data analysis. Quantitative data was analyzed using Stata 17, that's for descriptive and differential statistics. And specifically, a paired t-test was used for changes in variables, that is division of labor, resource decisions, income control, and self-reported information. Data was analyzed basing on comparison, that is for relations before and after reforms, basing as earlier indicated on 2006 as the boundary or impact year. The analysis based on indicators picked from the Women Empowerment in Agriculture Index, and these are mainly based on for the pre-reform information. It's based on recall. Scholars such as Allen and Neiman and Bamberg have underlined that where there is no pre-reform information, that the situation can be constructed basing on recorded data. And this approach has been used by studies such as Krishna to analyze shifts in poverty levels in Uganda and India, and a recent study by EMSOF on the effects of commercialization in Malawi. For quantitative data, I used the deductive semantic content analysis. That is, data obtained was transcribed, manually coded, grouped, and then the data to use in the thesis selected. For anonymity, I used the codes and code names, and the study being the fact that it involved the qualitative and quantitative data. Integration was undertaken at 2 levels, that is results presentation and discussion stages. For positionality, since the study involves qualitative data, it means that my personal values could easily affect the process and results, and to avoid this, in the spirit of reflexivity, I took a reflective stance and objective interpretation of results, taking the position of a non-potato farmer. The study faced some challenges, first one being suspicion, and refusal of respondents to provide some information, mostly on land, which was addressed by involving LOCs and explaining the purpose of the research, of course, as academic. There was another challenge of obtaining pre-reform data or information, which was addressed by using mixed methods involving life histories and lived experiences. I also used time-based or event-based questions to facilitate recall. A minute, excuse me. Findings, but faster respondents to socio-demographic characteristics. The study used 4 variables, that's gender, marital status, education level, and occupation. As regards to gender, 42% of the respondents were female, that's combined gender, and 58 were female. Significant differences were found in marital status. That is 28% of females were married. Sorry, were widowed against 3% of males. Why? Reason being that in the area, women are barred from remarrying upon losing their spouses. In terms of education, 25% of females had no education against 3%. And as far as occupation is concerned, only 4% of males were under salaried employment against 0% of females. While 6% of males participated in potato trade, while only 3% of females were in this occupation. Objective 1, forms of value chains and gendered practices that have emerged. The study found 2 forms of value chains that have emerged, that is digital aided and group led. However, these were fused with traditional physical value chains. Digitally aided value chains are utilized 3 categories of technologies, that's mobile phones, radios, and televisions. Significant gender differences were found in phone ownership, access, and application, which was contributed to patriarchal norms and differences in the control over resources and women's fear to own mobile phones as one in-depth interview respondent indicated some women don't like owning mobile phones. Several marriages have failed because of phones. Do you insist on owning something that you know will cause you problems? It was also attributed to women's illiteracy and lack of skills, as earlier indicated under the social demographic characteristics table. Women's limited access to technology led them to what was termed as social affordability, including access to phones from their children, neighbors, and friends and relatives. Significant differences were found in radio ownership, but the study noted that this was perceived ownership because a radio, once bought and placed in the household, it is accessed by everybody, and therefore it transfers technology to the entire household with some less restriction. However, qualitative interactions not indicated that there were restrictions on radio cassettes. Some men restricted use of radio cassettes, that they had to be played from one position. As far as group radio value chains are concerned, the study noted limited presence of this category, with only 13% of the respondents belonging to farmer groups, and they were largely dominated by women who used them as alternative sources of income. However, to participate in groups, women had to obtain approval to join, and also had to obtain permission to participate in the existing groups. The existing physical value chains, the study noted, underwent some transformation. Pre-reform, farmers were using family labor entirely to do marketing, and done through head potterage, and this was largely done in local-based markets, and harvests kept in home-based stores. But after the reforms, there was use of family labor and hired labor, which was done by 96% of the households, leading to what the study termed as a commoditization of labor. Head potterage was used with other means of transport, such as bicycles, motorcycles, but women's use was limited because it was regarded as a social disgrace. The transformation also led to new market channels, such as local-based markets, on-farm selling, sale to dealers, and long-distance trade. Effect of reforms on gender roles, that is objective 2. The study, basing on the argument that commercialization tends to affect household-based roles or reproduction roles, considered both roles within the households and roles across the value chains. As far as production roles are concerned, the study considered child care, land preparation, preparation of food, and others. The study noted intensified women's participation in child care, attributed to the fact that the reforms have led to increased participation of the girl child that used to help in child care in potato production activities. The study also noted increasing men's role in fetching water. Men that participated in fetching water before reforms were referred to as weak and bewitched. But the reason being that fetching water was in the public domain. But because of increased access to income, the study noted increased construction of home-based water tanks, which shifted the role from the public to the domestic domain, hence increasing men's participation. One key informant noted constructing home-based water tanks has become part of men's respect. Almost every household in my village has a water tank. When a man constructs a tank, one without it feels uncomfortable and has to identify a tank, a potato garden to construct a tank. There was also noted increased women's participation in livestock care. Pre-reform, families used to own large herds of livestock. However, with increased potato production and reduced land for grazing, the numbers have reduced, and what has remained, the few livestock owned by families are used for providing manure in what was termed as kufumbira. Women owned livestock, but they started noted that they owned small ruminants, largely sheep, while men owned cattle. The theoretical linkage here is that there is women's persistence, dominance of reproduction roles, which underlines the persistence of the triple burden. As far as value chain roles are concerned, a number of roles were considered, that is land clearing, plowing, seed selection, and many and others up to marketing and distribution. The study puts them into three categories, that is upstream, midstream, and downstream. To reform a number, the upstream roles such as land clearing, planting, and weeding, which were more differentiated, shifted to being joint, while others such as input acquisition and seed selection, which were jointly undertaken, shifted to being male dominated. And the reason is that commercialization of agriculture has led potato production to become a business, and therefore some activities are regarded as sensitive and can't be left in the hands of women. The exception applied to de facto female household heads who had to select potatoes when their husbands are away. Midstream roles, including storage and processing, which were more jointly undertaken but leaning on women before reforms, became male dominated. Remarkably, the study noted women's increasing participation in marketing. However, they dominated local-based markets, while men dominated the most lucrative long-distance trade. Women's participation in marketing was attributed to change in norms. As one in-depth interview respondent indicated, in the past years, there were societal norms, beliefs that barred women from extra household activities. For example, if a woman participates in marketing, she becomes a prostitute or an unruly. Even women feared societal perceptions, but these have changed today, and every household is on its own. But a few women that participated in long-distance trade were subjected to familiar rules, for example, prohibition against spending a night from the marital home. The findings imply that varied participation in value chains and varied participation in value chains implies that value chain structures and and governance shape gender division of labor, while women's participation in marketing contradicts literature such as Clay and Maestra that has consistently stated that women are excluded from participating in marketing. The study argued that this women's exclusion is not absolute, that they only have to navigate a number of biases in marketing. Objective 3, effect of reforms on gender power relations, access to production resources and control. Excuse me a minute. Beginning with access, the study defined access as the ability of farmers to use resources without having to require permission from their spouses. And it noted male dominance of land use, labor, and equipment. It also noted increasing permission requirements for women to use all resources, that is land, labor, and production equipment. But this requirement for permission was stronger in land, confirming Sene's argument that the land is the main resource in agricultural production. There was an exception in women's purchased land. The interpretation here is that the reforms have led to increased commercialization of land, which has also contributed to women's limited access. Land being the main resource in production, the study felt it's important to analyze the level of ownership before and after reforms for men. And it noted increased women's ownership of land, which has shifted from 6% to 13%, aligning with LandNet's finding that land ownership in Uganda stands at 16%. The study noted increased ownership of land, and this was attributed to women's land purchase, but women were largely forced into joint agreements. So the existing joint ownership of land by men and women was actually not voluntary. However, women applied non-confrontational means, such as surrendering part of the money from potato production to their husbands to buy alcohol and other things, being submissive during the period they are to buy land, and also buying them gifts such as shirts and suits for them to be able to sign agreements as independent or sole owners. However, much as women owned land, their ownership fell in the portfolio of less than 1 hectare compared to that of men that fell in the portfolio of 2-3 hectares. Control over land or land-related decision making. They study focused on a number of aspects. For example, which land to grow potatoes in relation to other crops, how much potatoes to plant on the land. And the study noted male domination of all the decisions, that is post-reform. In fact, as far as land decisions were concerned, some respondents equated a man to a king. As noted, authority over land vests in men. It's traditionally known. That's how we found it. That's one female from a female in-depth interview participant. While a focus group discussion participant noted, a man is a king in the family. A woman is a helper. Even if you get money as a woman, its origin is my father's sweat. Land in the study area has cultural strings attached. It is transferred through partial inheritance, that is through the male child, and women are largely regarded as transitory beings in natal homes and in society, and are also regarded as strangers in marital homes, and therefore can't be allowed to make decisions such as renting out land. However, the study noted increased joint decision making, but women's involvement was taken to be superficial. That they were only involved in decisions where men expected to benefit either from cooperative relationships or from the financial muscle of women. It noted women increasing decision on land hiring, but men always had keen interest in knowing whose land the woman was hiring and why. Because they always feared women using their neighbors' land and involving themselves in, acts of infidelity. The study also noted that women's autonomy in polygamous families, because men were always away. Because, for example, where a man only had 3 wives, it was always, the female respondents noted that the man was not always there every time to influence household-based decisions. The study also noted male dominance in other resource-related decisions, that is labor-related decisions, production equipment, and farm output. The exception was in hiring land and selling output from land under women's control, that is peripheral family land and hired land. Gendered effect on financial benefits from potato production, that is objective 4. The study noted that post-reform, farmers obtained income from different sources, hence what the study termed as dichotomous income streams for men and women, as indicated in the table, which shows the average incomes from the most recent season. Men's income was mainly obtained from the main primary land, hired land, and trade, while women's income was obtained from peripheral land, group participation, trade, and some from hired land. However, despite the income stream, the dichotomous income streams, women's income remained low compared to that of men, and this was attributed to the fact that men fear women with men fear women and always tended to frustrate their efforts to acquire income, and this concurs with what Asimwe noted. As far as control over income is concerned, a number of decision aspects were considered. That is custody of the money received, deciding on how the money should be used in production and other aspects. And it noted men's dominance of income allocation in all aspects post-reform, which was attributed to patriarchy and control of land, which is the main source of income. But it noted women's increased role in income custody, attributed to the fact that some men, due to their extravagant tendencies, had tended to surrender some of the income to women for custody. But it noted that in most instances, this led to conflicts, mostly at the point where men requested for the money, because women always asked for the purpose or the reason why that money was being demanded for. And in qualitative interactions, men noted that a woman had no authority to ask or to question the man when actually the money came from his father's or from his own land. The study also noted increased women's decision role, though modest in big household affairs, but largely education, as one respondent noted. Is it logical for a man to stop me from choosing a school for the child when I am ready to pay the biggest portion of school fees? The results point to the fact that increasing women's income, mostly from independent sources, enhances their bargaining position. Of course, issues around this, that some literature points to the fact that increasing women's income tends to produce power mutations. But this study urged that such power mutations are countered by women's strengthened fallback position and will not actually have grave effects. As far as income spending is concerned, the study noted that women's income was largely spent on routine purchases such as food, and other household items such as furniture, while many's income was spent on occasional purchases such as land purchase and others, and also on adult goods such as food outside the household. However, there was noted increased women's contribution towards some big household affairs such as fees, medical care, and automobiles. But as earlier noted, women were not allowed to use the automobiles much as they owned them. Conclusion, reforms and commercialization produced mixed gender relations outcomes. They did not only produce negative consequences for women, but offered opportunities for increased participation and agency in marketing, income control, and some land, which points to the transformative effect of the reforms. And importantly, the reforms contributed to a gradual shift, in the fulcrum of traditional cultural norms and beliefs from the broader community to individual households, hence the aphorism, every household on its own. But women still remained constrained by familial rules, following the shift of traditional norms to the household, and which calls for attention on how market reforms and commercialization can equitably distribute power, resources, and opportunities. The study contributes to literature on smallholder agricultural value chains evolution by providing a categorization mostly of digital aided and group led, which has not been undertaken in Uganda. It extended the analysis of reform effects on low value food crops, which have previously been neglected by studies on market reforms and commercialization impacts. It also addresses the limitations in gender disaggregated data in smallholder agricultural production decried by scholarship such as Bahane and Whitehead, but also contributes to broader discourses on smallholder commercialization and gender relations and disciplines, development studies, rural development, gender studies, and agricultural economics. Our recommendations underscores the enforcement of top-down interventions with bottom-up approaches, that is legal aid services, targeting protection of women's acquired property and ensuring gender justice, and attitude change at household level, the household being the new fulcrum of unequal gender power relations. It also underlines value addition, mainly through establishment of model plant. Literature shows that this actually has remained at proposal level by by government, and the study underlines once this is undertaken, employment based on affirmative action. For example, 50% employment for males and females. It also underlines targeted women's empowerment, that is training and skilling, aiming at enhancing their capacities to participate in the downstream segment of the value chain, and lastly, strengthening existing farmer groups. The farmer groups that were found to exist were more localized, and this could address what the study termed as middlemen capture, which largely contributed to women's exploitation. Further research, the study outlines the need for collection of time series data, that is annually. This bases on the fact that given the increasing drive for commercialization, more dynamic gender relations are expected. It also underlines that a need for a detailed study on gender relations in the marketing node, which showed unique dynamics. And lastly, the study of the livelihood trajectories could have given rise to. The study so far has contributed 2 publications from it as indicated. And acknowledgements, my supervisors, Dr. Lawyer Kafureeka and David Mugambe Mpiima, and the Erasmus PhD Exchange Program coordinators in Uganda and Germany, and Professor Svenja Uli and Alicia Platt, who are demonstrators at CGN University, where I stayed for 3 months. The Knowledge PhD Mobility Program, which enabled me to travel to a number of countries, staff in the Development Studies Department, the Dean, School of Liberal and Performing Arts, and the family, and my research assistants and participants. Please, Chair, receive my submission.
Thank you very much, Denis. I think you should sit for a minute and sip your water. Okay, so I would now like to invite our critical reader to take the podium here and engage with the candidate. And as our critical reader comes, I would like to thank Professor Farouk for what you're doing to make sure that things are under control. So, Dr. Sawa, you'll have to come over here. Thank you.
Chair, thank you very much for this opportunity, and colleagues around and the panel. First, I want to thank you, Denis, for this very good work. I enjoyed reading it, and I usually don't want to be called an opponent. This, I'm not an opponent. I'm just a critical reader, and I just want to engage you on some few issues regarding your work, which I read. So this is a conversation. I'm not opposing your work. I'll start with on a soft note. On a soft note, in your dedication, you dedicated this work to your sons. You just say to my sons, Howard and Gavin. Is that enough in your view? Just a few words to my sons, Howard and Gavin.
Yeah, I feel it's enough because the choice of whom one dedicates his work to is personal. Yeah, it can be dedicated to a group or even to none.
Okay. I thought a dedication is usually made with some passion and probably love or affection. So that is why I wondered why you only say to my sons. But anyway, I got your acknowledgements. I'm actually following the structure of your book, if you don't mind. You note here that your supervisor, Dr. Kafureeka, was very instrumental, and also your second supervisor, Dr. Mpiima, and you particularly thanked Dr. Mpiima for being patient with you as you learned what you call the complex gender terminologies. Are these terminologies still complex at this stage?
I would say having interface with them for the first time, I would say some are not, while I would say some may still be, reason being that I feel there are those that this study could not exhaust, and those could still be complex for me.
Okay.
Yes.
But the ones in the study are okay now.
Yeah, I feel those ones are okay.
Okay. I'm looking at I looked at your abstract, but maybe we can come back to that later. Some of the issues, we are going to discuss them as we move on. Now let me go to the glossary related to that question of the complex terms. You actually tried to unpack many of these terms, but I thought, given your work and your title, there are some terms that you probably missed to define for us. And a very important one, which I actually wanted to see immediately I looked at your topic, was how you defined impact. Because your title is the impact of agricultural liberalization and commercialization on gender relations. So how did you define impact? Because it is not here in the glossary.
Yeah, much as it doesn't appear, but in the work it's implied as a long-term consequence of an intervention. That's how it was conceptualized and used in the work, much as it is not produced in or included in the glossary. A long-term consequence of an intervention, long-term.
Okay.
Yes.
And long-term, how did you measure it? How did you measure this impact?
A long-term was based on looking at the period during which the reforms that this study focused on took place. Because I used 3 decades from late 1980s and early 1990s, and of course the subsequent commercialization that they led to, and how these have influenced gender relations at the micro level in the long term.
Okay.
Yes.
And you have gender norms. You define them as the informal rules and shared social expectations distinguishing expected behavior based on gender. What are the types? Do you know the types of these gender norms?
The types of norms.
And which ones did you find very important in this study? The types and the ones you found very important.
These were the study being based on or focusing on both the household and the value chains. There are norms that were household based, what women are expected to do, child care, and some other rules traditionally taken to be preserved for women, cooking and others. Those are all actually role expectations, the collective expectations. That is for the household. And also along with the value chains, they defined what women have to or are expected to undertake as far as some activities are concerned.
Okay. So you are mainly talking about roles
and expectations
along the value chain.
Yes,
and
roles along with the value
right?
chain and expectations. Yes, sir.
Okay. Are you aware of descriptive and prescriptive norms?
Well, the study didn't address that. Probably I would have to find the time, look at it, and include it if need be.
Okay, you might need within these norms to distinguish between those that are descriptive and prescriptive. What these women and men do and what they're expected to do. If you had unpacked that, it would have really improved the work, but still not bad. Let me go to the value chains. Again here in your glossary or terms, the value chains are missing. How did you define these value chains in your work? I see you define them later on, and actually cited some of those critical authors. But I also see, I'm talking about the glossary, what you should have really included, or in your key terms, or definition of terms, if you want to call it, because this should come up front. And what you mean by agricultural market reforms, because sometimes you use it interchangeably with commercialization. So are they the same? The reforms and commercialization in this case?
No, there are agricultural market liberalization reforms, which were actually macro level based policies, I would say, which were undertaken in agriculture specific 1991 to 1996. So while the reforms were macro level, commercialization explains the logic of how they unfolded at the micro level. I mean, the reforms are targeted creating some change. Then how this change has unfolded at the micro level is what is termed as commercialization.
Okay. Now another important one.
Okay.
White potatoes. White potatoes. I expected you to actually talk about these potatoes, because I think your case study, your entire case study was on white potatoes, isn't it? But you don't, in the entire book, you don't really devote even a paragraph on these potatoes, describing to the reader what are they. So you prompted me to think deeper, maybe read deep about these white potatoes. And are these what we usually call Irish potatoes?
The Irish potatoes, but the term was deliberately used because the white potatoes connotes the original name, actually, that refers to all types of what we call Irish potatoes. I based on the origin of these crops, the root tuber crops called Irish potatoes. They were originally grown by the Inca in the Andes Mountains in South America, but they were later transferred by road rally to Ireland. And from there, they were also further transferred by the Irish migrants to New England, where they spread to the whole world. So from Ireland, actually they picked the name of Irish. So from there they came to be termed as Irish potatoes, and on up to this time. So I used the term to refer to all varieties I think it is noted somewhere in a footnote about the use of white potatoes as all varieties that are grown in Uganda. I think somewhere I mentioned Rutuku, Kuruza, and the rest.
Okay, thank you for that history, because I was going to ask you, but this should have appeared in your work, the history of these potatoes, the origin from South America, and why you actually decided to call them white potatoes instead of Irish potatoes. Was there a reason?
Yeah, actually, I did this under somebody's recommendation that much as it was white potato value chains, the focus was on gender relations and the roles, and not describing the potatoes themselves. So some would say if I needed to give a further explanation, I could put it aside. But whoever picked interest would follow it from there.
Okay, I would have loved to see a description of these potatoes in the background, at least talk about them, and why you decided to call them white potatoes. Because here we call them Irish potatoes. And I think you made a good decision, because in that country you have described from where they spread, that is where I did my PhD. And it would be very bad if they hear you calling them Irish potatoes. They don't want to hear that. Yes, they prefer to call them potatoes. So I think this was a wise decision. I must commend you on this one. So, yeah, those people, the Irish, don't want to call them Irish potatoes. Yeah, you rather call them potatoes, or because when we were there and we call them Irish potatoes, they were offended. They would usually become offended. So it is good you call them that. Now, I was going to ask you the scientific name of these potatoes, which should also appear in the background. You know, as scientists, when you're trying to explain certain things, you need to. So what is a white potato? What is the scientific name? I don't know whether you know it, since you know the origin. Okay? Do you know the scientific name?
I could struggle with it as
okay.
Solanum, something like
Solanum.
That. Yes, Solanum.
Tuberosum, something
yes.
like that.
Yes.
Okay, so that should appear in your background. Then you talked about gender relations. But I would have liked to know, why are these gender relations important beyond just the definition? In the context of your study, why are gender relations important?
Yeah, the definition I gave was that they are relations, symbolic relations of symbolic material relations, symbolic material relations of power within households and beyond. And, symbolic would mean that they are rooted within norms and traditions, and then material points to resources, meaning that who controls between men and women in households, who controls which resources, and possibly how is this influenced by the existing norms and rules within the household and the extra household context, which is actually central to this study.
Okay. I expected you to talk about issues of position of men and women in society, identity, intersectionality, which is also in your findings, by the way. You try to look at that. So somewhere when you're explaining these gender relations, it is important that you elaborate why they are important. So those issues should really come out. Now, the unit of analysis.
Yes.
At some point, you say your unit of analysis was households. And then somewhere else you say it was individuals, women and men. Which is which? What was your actual unit of analysis?
I think maybe the mentioning that it was household could have been an error somewhere. But given that gender relations are experienced by men and women, individuals, they are not inter-household relations. They are relations between individuals, and within our context, this is mainly a man and a woman. So that one that clearly makes points the fact that the unit of analysis is the individual who experiences these relations and not the household.
Okay. And from your theorization, you looked at the household beyond just that unit, and you went deep into the individual. So that's what I wanted to hear.
Yes.
Now, again, in your background, you talk about these market liberalization reforms in the global south, how they have been central on page 3 in development debates since the 80s, and that much of the literature in sub-Saharan Africa has concentrated on these outcomes: price shifts, production levels, market performance. And my question here is that aren't these gendered? The price shifts, the production levels, the market performance? Because you don't mention it here.
Actually, that was, I think I wrote that paragraph as a critique to the existing studies, because indeed most studies have, as underlined by Oyer and Whitehead, their previous studies have focused on private changes and changes in production levels, and neglected changes, all the effects of liberalization reforms, and by large the resulting commercialization at the micro level, and particularly in low value food crops. Most studies, even those that made attempts, focus on high value cash crops, for example, coffee. But outside that existing studies, previously, they focused on effects on price shifts and production levels and market performance, and narrowly on low value smallholder crops.
Okay, so which ones are understudied in this case?
What is understudied is what has actually been neglected: the low value smallholder food crops,
such as
the Irish potatoes, which is my case. There are others.
White potatoes.
White yes. Potatoes.
Yes.
Okay, please.
Thank you.
Yes. White potatoes.
I'll avoid calling them Irish for this purpose.
Okay, please.
Okay.
And the other crops that were regarded as largely as women's crops.
Okay.
Yes.
And you argue again here that the reforms were largely transformative.
Yes.
Now, I want to ask, do you mean gender transformative? And how?
Gender transformative, in that they have over time led to shifts in positions of men and women as far as participation in in production generally, not only potatoes, or in the value chains, and even on roles within the household. That's what the word transformative was pointed to.
Okay. So in the case of this study, your study, would you say the reforms were gender transformative?
I would say to some specific reference to my study, to some extent.
Okay.
Yes.
To some extent.
Yes.
So there is what we call, I saw you used Kabia, Naila
Yes,
Kabia.
Yes.
Did you look at her social relations framework?
Yes, I did.
She has classified those to include gender responsive, gender sensitive, or gender distributive, and now gender transformative. So if you say to some extent, do you mean to some extent the reforms are gender sensitive or gender responsive if they are not transformative?
I would say they are gender responsive.
Particularly the roles.
The
changes in the roles.
The changes in the roles.
Yes.
I would say they are responsive.
Okay. All right. I was going to invite you to read Kabia more, but I think that one is good. Now on page 4, again, you refer to a certain country called Ethiopia. Does that country exist?
Probably that was a typo.
I was wondering if there is a new country called Ethiopia.
It must be Ethiopia with a skipped I.
Okay. So, in other words, there are a few typos in your work which you may need to pay attention to. Now, again, in terms of the background, you did a good job. But again, I will emphasize that you need to write about these white potatoes, the origin, the scientific name, why are they important in this background. And secondly, you, can I call them subtitles that you created, 1.1.1 on agricultural market liberalization reforms? I think you need another subsection on Uganda, because you are mixing up. At some point you are talking about the global, and then you bring Uganda again, then you bring it. So I think the writing on Uganda should be 1.1.2, and then you discuss Uganda last in that section. The problem now, I move to the statement of the problem. Would you agree that your statement of the problem, first of all, is it a statement of the problem or a problem statement, the one you wrote? Did you write a statement of the problem or a problem statement?
Well, okay, problem statement.
I think yours is a statement of the problem.
Yeah, that was a typo which I will have to attend to.
It is a statement of the problem because it is more elaborate. You have about 2 paragraphs or so. But going back to my question, I see your problem is mainly on the gaps. The gaps are well laid out. I don't see, for example, for a start, what we would call the ideal situation with a gender lens. Because when you're writing the problem, you start with that. But somehow, or almost entirely in your problem, you don't address or you don't talk about the ideal situation. What is the situation regarding these reforms? Why would gender relations be important? Okay? Then after that, you go to what is being done about these gender relations. Because in your literature, you talk about some strategies and policies in Uganda, which I think should come here after discussing the ideal situation. What is being done about it? So somewhere you cited the NDP, for example, but I still don't see any agricultural policy or strategy. And yet in your recommendations, you are calling for some changes in the policy. So did you read the land policy, the land act, the agricultural policy? Because these are very critical for your work.
Okay, I think part of the policy had been included, but it was removed under the recommendation of a strong recommendation, actually, of some of one of the examiners would say it had been put there. But I'm going to bring it back. I'm going to go to the other copy and put it back.
I think you need to discuss it briefly in the problem statement and also in your literature. Okay? It is very important. I now go to the objectives. Denis? The objectives are well stated. Objective 1. Whereas in objective 2, 3, and maybe 4, you try to address the impact in your study, if you know what I mean. Yes. In objective 1, you went straight to the forms. You didn't give us a retrospective analysis of what was there before. You just went to identifying the forms of value chains and gender practices that have emerged. You didn't tell us what were these value chains that existed before the reforms. Is there a difference? Are these really new, or what was there in the past?
I think that that's what was there in the past is part of it is covered under chapter 4, which focused on the evolution of gender relations and actually evolution of gender division of labor in agricultural production in Uganda. But I could still bring it and make it part of this objective.
Because the whole gist of your study is you're examining the impact, okay, which should flow through the objectives from objective 1 to 2 to 3. But in this objective, you left the retrospective part, the before, to the literature. And probably you didn't get empirical. Did you have empirical data on that? The before? Yes.
Before, based on literature, not on empirical data.
Okay.
Literature.
Okay.
Yes.
We can't go back to the field for that.
Yes.
So, but you can integrate what is already known, probably here. You can see how to do it. Because my comment was that you didn't reflect on the pre-reform value chains, and you went straight to tell us these are the new value chains. Yet in the literature you also mentioned some of these, maybe in the context of Rubanda. That is when they become new. But that is something for you to think about. And then objective 2, to map the changes in gender roles within farming households and across different nodes of the white potato value chains. So Does this give us the retrospective or the before? This objective. In the findings you have it, but the way it is stated. So something could be missing there, probably following commercialization or something, following the reforms. So that objective could be revisited. And then objective 3, to examine the impact of the reforms and commercial orientation on gender power relations in access, decision making and control over production resources within height potato farming households. So there is another species of potatoes in the objectives?
No, it's the letter that were you missing there. No.
Or type?
Yes.
So these typos are, please you need to look at them. Okay. The justification and the significance. Do you know the difference between justification and the significance of the study?
Yeah, justification points to really why the study is critical, is important, and is needed. This is justification. And the significance is its contribution, which can be theoretical, methodological, or empirical.
Okay.
Yes.
In other words, why is the study important? That is significance.
Yes.
And then justification is the rationale.
Yes.
But from your write-up, I think you could have interchanged them. What you probably wrote as justification was significance. Okay. And then the other way around. So I think you need to look at it critically later on. I asked you already about the social relations approach, so I will leave that one. The scope, geographical scope. Why did you go to Rubanda? Why not Kabale, Kisoro, Kapchorwa? Because these are the main white potato growing districts in Uganda.
Rubanda was carved out of Kabale district in 2016.
Okay.
2016, yeah. And really, when I was checking the data and the statistics, I found that much of the potato production that was tagged on Kabale was actually being undertaken in Rubanda.
Okay.
Because Kabale, it is Kamuganguzi and partly Ruchiga, and that's all. So I found high concentration. The aim actually, the original target was Kabale.
Okay.
But then I found that there is high concentration in Rubanda and not Kabale.
Okay.
Yes.
And you said primarily the selection was due to high concentration of potato production, yes, and well-developed value chains. Right?
Yes.
So what if the value chains were not developed? Would you have gone somewhere else?
Yeah, that was actually the expectation, because it is that if potato production is largely in the patches here and there and not concentrated, then one would not talk of commercial-based production.
Okay. We go to chapter 2 now, your literature review. Why didn't you start with a review of the key concepts that you used in the study? Because you went straight to agricultural market liberalization reforms. Why didn't you engage us on some of these key concepts first? Was it an intended omission?
Yeah, I'm going to work on that. Probably. I followed the I followed the guide, actually, the 2011 Makerere University format for proposals and the theses, and also tried to look at the existing theses that have been produced following that guide. And that's how I came to write it this way.
Okay. I think that one you can revise it later, because usually a critical review of the key concepts must precede the themes for your objectives. Now, on page 23, I see an overlap in these new typologies of smallholder value chains. Can digital aided also be group led and vice versa?
Not at all. Digital aided are based on digital technologies, and mainly conventional technologies that are dominant in the global south, mobile phones and the rest. And group led are based on groups, farmer groups.
Can't groups have mobile phones or radios?
Yeah, that's why I actually talked about the fusion, that existing value chains are fused.
Okay.
Yes.
That is what I wanted you to mention.
Yes.
Because digital aided and group led, within the groups you have people who have these ICTs,
yes,
who are using mobile phones, who are using radios, and maybe other gadgets. So I think you need to tactfully try to draw a distinction, okay? Or highlight those similarities in that fusion that you are talking about. Okay, I go to still your literature, the section on Uganda and the context, the policy and what I want to emphasize that one. I think if it was removed, in my view, it is not proper. It should be brought back. Okay? We need that understanding of, you know, the funnel approach.
Yes.
Yes. Global, regional, and what is actually happening in Uganda is very important. I go to the theories that you used. Value chain and outcome focused bargaining, theoretical frameworks. I like the fact that you used Naila Kabia a lot, because I was going to question why you didn't use, for example, women's empowerment framework. You've heard about it?
Yes. Yes.
By Naila Kabia?
Yes.
When I look at your theories, particularly outcome focused bargaining, Naila Kabia wrote a lot about that. And value chain theory, you highlighted it that it is good on gender participation but not power relation. So I'm not going to ask you about that one. You've mentioned it here in the presentation, but probably you need to engage more with the Naila Kabia. I see you used her writing on bargaining in particular,
yes,
but you cite, I think 1994, that is gender hierarchies in development thought, right? Probably her work on resources and agency and achievement would also be very good, and I see it in your references, but it's not appearing here. You're only using 1994, but that 1999 reference on resources and agents and achievements, if you don't want to use the economic empowerment framework. The good thing, your PhD is in development studies, but I can imagine if it was in gender studies, my colleagues would have encouraged you to use, they would have encouraged you to use a a mainstream gender theory, especially women's economic empowerment. But you can see that one, you can address it later. I will now go to the conceptual framework on page 43. You wrote it well, but usually when we talk about transforming or transformation, I see here you have upscaled food value chains, enhanced market efficiency, improved production. I'm keen on gender transformation. Okay? So what about changes in gender norms? Especially the roles that were actually very evident in your findings. Don't you think it is important to include them in this conceptual framework?
I would say this part looks at the what was expected actually from the liberalization reforms. The expectation from the reforms was to strengthen existing production systems, including value chains and ensuring market efficiency. And that overall this was expected to produce equal benefits for men and women. The other effects that you could be pointing to actually came to be as unintended effects over the reforms. So I felt those could be addressed under the heading of effect on gender relations, that is in the quadrant above the lower one of transformed smallholder production.
Okay, you can revisit it. That is a suggestion.
Okay.
I go to methodology. You say the study employed a mixed methods approach anchored in the pragmatism paradigm. You know the logic of research design, if I'm to call it. You usually start with the paradigm, then you go to the approach, then you go to the methods, and actually before the approach you may look at the design, the strategies and etc. So why didn't you separate the approach and the paradigm? I will use your supervisor's term, Dr. Kafureeka. This is you wrote about it here in acknowledgement.
Yes.
So don't you think you need to separate the paradigm and write about it very well from the approach, because you mix them up here? Okay? It is fine to say it is anchored in there, but it would be better to have the paradigm alone and the approach.
Okay.
So that it sounds like the PhD, like Dr. Kafureeka likes. Now, the design, your study design, you adopted a sequential mixed methods design, right?
Yes.
At some point, you cite Tedley and Tashakori, and then in other areas, you cite Cresswell. Okay?
Yes.
I don't know which is which. But I would like to know how exactly was this done? Because if you go to page 69, I indicated that I was concerned about the time lag. The time lag between the quantitative phase of the study,
yes,
and the qualitative phase. It is almost a year. The time lag, yes, from what I read here.
Yes.
Do you mean it took you a year to analyze the quantitative and use it to do your qualitative investigations? Wasn't that too long?
Yeah, there is a reason there that after collecting the quantitative data, I think, yeah, that's when I traveled to Germany, and unfortunately, I was working on these analyses with somebody who was based here, and the exercise was not executed on his side as expected, because I had hoped that they would get the results and then attend to them and then after go to for the second phase. But there was delay in handling the quantitative part of the data. You agree with me that being from here, I couldn't undertake that exercise. It was in the hands of somebody, and at some point I had to wait.
So you had difficulties in analyzing the data. That's why it took long.
The quantitative, I had to move from one person to another to make sure that I get the results out.
Okay. But you said you were in Germany for 3 months.
Yeah, 3 months, yes. But the data was left in somebody's hands.
Yes.
Being not on the ground here, it was left, and he went to do his own business. The time I returned, it means I had to engage him in the first year.
Okay.
Yeah, and getting results wasn't that easy.
Okay, you finally got the results. On page 62, you talk about the reason why you adopted this strategy, the explanatory sequential, to explore a large survey sample, to capture changes in quantitative variables, and then interrogate the questions in more depth with a selected number of individuals during the exploratory phase, right?
Yes.
So what does Creswell call this? Because I see here you read Creswell, one of my most favorite, my favorite methodology authors actually. So what does he call this?
I don't get your question clearly.
When you say you used this strategy, the explanatory sequential, right?
Yes, yes.
To explore a large survey sample, to capture changes in quantitative variables, and then interrogate the questions in more depth with a selected number of individuals during the exploratory phase. In other words, what is the essence of first analyzing this data before you do the quantitative?
Yeah,
what does he call that?
Yeah, the aim was to identify the trends. For example, in roles within the household and along the value chain and in the control of our resources. I wanted to first get the trends in the data. And
so what does he call that, getting those trends? There is a term Creswell uses, which you should have used here.
Probably I would need to be guided on that term.
Testing hypothesis. Testing hypothesis. You wanted to test hypothesis and then you do the qualitative. Okay. That one you can look at it later.
But sir, the study really didn't go into hypothesis testing. Yeah, I will have to make that one clear, because that one would be taking the study into something else, I feel.
Yes, that is not what Creswell actually means when he says testing hypothesis. He actually means that you analyze the data first, you analyze it, find out the trends, and then use that to do more investigations.
Okay.
That's what he means by testing hypothesis. It is not what you are talking about. So that one you can read about it more later. And then I will go to your sample, the quantitative sample, how you generated it using a margin of error of 8%, which comes to 92%.
Yes.
as the confidence interval. Why did you use 8%? Why not a confidence level of 95% or 99%?
There are two reasons here. One being that I felt I was dealing with a population that was engaged in a similar activity. Because all farmers are engaged in the potato production. There is homogeneity there. And I felt there wasn't need for a very big sample. If I used, for example, 5%, I tried it and got a sample size of 600 households, which would actually mean 1,000 plus individual respondents. And I saw myself running into an impossibility.
Okay.
So I had to increase the margin of error to reduce on the sample size.
Okay. All right. That is what I was expecting you to explain. Because usually in research, research is also determined by time and the resources that we have, right? So you are at liberty to adjust the margin of error to meet the resources. Okay. You also say that you used circular systematic sampling. Circular systematic sampling on page 67.
Yes.
Usually this type of sampling is used when you are not sure of the starting point and the ending point. Are you saying in your study you didn't know where to start from and where to end from?
It's not that. I wanted to have a random sample. The first sample that had to be a random one. And in case it exceeded the sample size, then I would go to the starting point. That is circular. The reason was that I needed to have a random sample.
Why didn't you just state simply random and you know the areas and you do it there? And maybe use other methods like, systematic or simple random. Anyway, I think we can leave that. We can't change that now. What we can't change now, we leave. Okay? Now, in your key formats, you have technical officers at the district. Agriculture, production, farmer organization group leaders, local council leaders who are good. But isn't there any NGO that is doing work on these potatoes in Rubanda?
Yeah, I found one NGO, that is IFDC, International Fertilizer Development Center.
Why didn't you talk to them?
Yeah, fine, that one now.
Okay. The good thing, the NGO. I even indicated it here on page 68, International Fertilizer Development Center.
Yes.
So you are acquainted with your study area. Maybe that was an oversight.
Okay.
All right. I've talked about the period, the lag between the quanti and quali, asking why. That was explained. I won't ask you that again. Now, in your in-depth interviews, you're explaining what they are. And you tell us that these involve the solicitation of qualitative information from individual farmers, men and women, using open-ended structured questionnaires. Open-ended structured questionnaires. Was there a mistake?
I'm trying to get there. I need to get to the page clearly.
Can a questionnaire be open-ended and structured?
Probably that was a typo or something that needs to be corrected.
Okay.
Yes.
So I was wondering, do you mean semi-structured, or you mean open-ended entirely?
For the survey, they were semi-structured, but for the other qualitative for the qualitative part, they were open-ended.
Okay, because when I looked at your tools in the appendix,
Yes.
or appendices, they actually, the in-depth interviews were open-ended.
Yes.
So that's why I asked this. So maybe that was a typo.
Yes.
You can correct
was
that
a
one.
bit.
You had observation in your study, but you didn't really explain how you did these observations. You just put a few lines. For example, I would like to know how many observations did you do? Did you have an observation checklist?
Yeah, it is appended. It's among the appendices.
Which I saw, but how many observations?
And
what were you observing?
The forms of storage, the storage facilities that are used today, plus the nature of the topography and the type of labor used actually in the transportation. The aim was to establish whether women are actually able to participate in these in the transportation given the topography, plus the storage facilities and transportation means used.
Okay.
Yes.
So you would have stated that you observed the value chain, some activities along the value chain. Okay? Storage, I don't know, maybe you could have even gone to their gardens and see whether they are weeding depending on the season, you know, the markets, the farmer groups. So that was not well explained here. So maybe you need to revisit that as well. Now, I go to the study limitations and challenges. You said you had heavy rains and you experienced heavy rains and your research assistants, and at some point you spent several hours, you couldn't do any work. But who are these research assistants? You don't talk about them. How many were they?
There were two. I think I had to mention somewhere.
I didn't see them mentioned anywhere.
I have to include the number, but I had two research assistants during the first phase of data collection.
Okay. Usually for us in gender, we need to even know the sex of the assistants. Yes. And why?
Yeah, it was male and female.
It gives the study a certain face. I hope you know that now.
Yes.
Yes. So were they both males?
No, it was male and female.
Okay. I also see that you decided to seek your ethical clearance from Gulu University Research Ethics Committee.
Yes.
Why did you skip our committees? Maybe on committees, because we have one here in Chus that I think is good and swift enough. Why did you decide to go to Gulu?
Actually, it is not as swift as you mentioned. Because yes.
And the principal is here.
Yeah, it is.
Unfortunately for you. So was it because our ethical committee is not swift enough that you decided to go to Gulu?
Yeah, actually.
Or you wanted a shortcut?
No,
that they are not critical enough, so you wanted to get your approval very fast?
A shortcut at time is made when someone is moving away from an obstacle. That one has put in their document and then it stays there and
so what was the obstacle?
Actually, I had tried to get that clearance, but over delayed. And while I was in Germany, I tried to look for who could clear me. So I had to, when I wrote and they responded, the other ones responded, then I had to engage them and got cleared.
It is unethical to submit to 2 committees. I hope you know that.
But I even emails were written and I kept checking and at times got
it is like submitting to 2 journals and you are writing an article at the same time. Is it allowed?
No, what happens in the instance that one is not responding?
Okay. You should have asked for a first review. There is a window for that one, from what I know, from the choose committee. Yes. So anyway, that was something for us to think about. Yeah. Now, on page 77, as I said earlier, you are saying you use the household as a unit of analysis. Yet earlier you said you are using what? Individuals. So that should be corrected. And I will go to the reliability section, where I see here you pretested your tools in the same sub-county where you did the study. Why didn't you go to a neighboring one?
Actually,
or at least another village which was not part of where you...
At that point, I wasn't actually sure which sub-counties I was to conduct the study from, until I was guided by the district production and marketing officer on the areas that had the high level of concentration of potato production. But it is not that pretesting was done in the exact areas. Our data collection wasn't done in the exact areas where the pretesting was conducted from, much as they were the same sub-counties, but not the exact villages.
But did you state that here?
Yeah, I would have to include it.
You need to state the village where you pretested, distinguish it from the other villages where you did the actual work. Because you don't state it here. Someone can think that you are lying or something. I'm assuming you know the villages where you pretested.
Yes.
Okay. Now, lastly on methodology, the challenges. You say you spent a lot of time in the field, and some of these farmers considered the 10,000 you are giving them too small as compensation to provide vital information, right? So it is not really clear from your write-up here how much you actually ended up giving those ones who are not satisfied with the 10,000, but you are aware of the requirement by Uganda National Council that these people have to be compensated.
I was aware of that requirement, and I was prepared to do it. But while I was trying to trace the areas with higher potato production or concentrated potato production, the agriculture, the marketing officer alerted me that there were some areas such as Hamhambo, it's called the Hamhambo, the council, that there was a lot of commercialization of research, that I should go there prepared to pay more than actually had mentioned to him. And indeed, actually, when I reached there, the first person I consulted for guidance, he also emphasized the same. And I had to, for some individuals, I had to add some money as compensation.
Okay.
Yes.
But you know the minimum by National Council?
The minimum is 10,000.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So you had some money.
I didn't have it, but I had no choice.
Because usually, when you are constrained, you state it clearly that I cannot provide more than 10,000. Okay? So I don't know. Maybe you had some money to navigate that. And I hope you didn't end up biasing the respondents. In a way. Because sometimes when you pay people differently in the field, you get issues. People in one village know that you gave them 10,000. Then people in another village know you gave them 15. Chaos for you as a researcher. So I don't know how you manage that. But let me go to the findings.
Okay, please.
We'll leave that.
No, I'm okay. It's okay.
Okay. I indicated earlier that I didn't see the retrospective data on objective 1. So I think that one is something you can think about. It's what I indicated here. And I see your demographics were few. I think about 5. Why didn't you put them in one table? To look smarter. The sex, the marital status, the... I think as I saw you did in one of your journal articles. Why didn't you... It looks smarter, I think, in my view, if there are not many. That is just a comment for you to think about.
Okay.
And you are saying the proportion of widowed women being 28% was higher than that of widowed men, implying a wide existence of de jure female-headed households. Did you find out how many these were? Or even the other ones, the de facto, for you to conclude that there were so many?
No,
there is a wide existence of de jure female-headed households in the community.
The Jew are those who they head households, we say by right, and by right means they are widowed. It's not that their husbands went somewhere and would come back.
Okay.
They are working somewhere and would come back at some time.
Yes.
And yeah, that's what I based on to make that statement.
Okay. So did you find out generally, maybe from you boss or where, the statistics between the de jure and de facto before you come to this conclusion?
It would be rare. That information was not. It's not available on widowed women in Rubanda, mostly being a new district.
You might need to look at the latest UBOS report, although some people have dismissed it. But you might need to look at it, okay, and maybe indicate here.
Yeah, but the study was conducted before that report was produced. Actually, that's why based on the 2014 National Population and Housing Census,
okay,
not the one the subsequent one.
Okay. Anyway, that is also just a comment. Let me go to still in your findings, objective 1. The digitally aided value chains. In one of your voices here, you say a female respondent reported in an FGD that some women do not like owning mobile phones. Phones have a lot of problems. I think you had it here also.
Yes.
In your presentation. Now there is a lot of discussion about that quotation that you could have generated here or discussed or written about more. What was the real challenge? What are the problems that these women are actually facing with owning mobile phones? If marriages are failing, every minute you have to be tense. You insist on owning something you know will bring. There are so many. There is a dilemma here for women in terms of owning these phones. Yes. If we are to take them as resources that they need in the value chain. So you would have written more or discussed this more. And I know your supervisor is an expert on gender and ICTs. Some more detail is needed here to bring out those nuances and and reasons why this is happening, to unpack these challenges more for these women. Okay. I'll go to page 99. Okay, on the group-led value chains now. The results that you have indicated that 13% of the respondents belong to farmer groups, and many of them were women. Why do we have more women in these farmer groups?
As most mainly female. Which actually is results to farmer groups and
okay, because there are only 5. Okay. So you don't need a table for that. I've been about time, so I will use the next 2 minutes or so. Findings on. They're already findings. Why don't you go straight to the title without these findings? Index of market reforms on gender roles. Okay? Instead of findings on. Yeah. Because it makes it monotonous. Eh? Okay. Yes. Some people would say boring also. On page 110, still on your findings on market reforms and gender roles, I was impressed by the changes in roles in water fetching brought by home-based water tanks, what you call home-based water tanks. But are these home-based water tanks? Is that the right rainwater harvesting tanks? What are they? I think they are rainwater harvesting tanks.
Yeah, they are rain harvesting, but I use the term home because they are based at
I know you want to use a more gender-related term, but they are called rainwater harvesting tanks. And I think that is the term you should be using here. All things women have been involved. Okay, so when the water is next to that, reduces the burden for the women, but also improve on water quality. It doesn't get from ponds, reduction burden. Okay, as we talk about the changes in the role. So that is very all right. Let me go to your third. Is it the third objective where you are mapping change in management and control production? I see on page 152, where you talk about income, custody of income received from separate potted gardens. It appears that the cooperation between spouses was a key point, but which you didn't expound on clearly in terms of determining how this income is shared among or between spouses. The cooperation, it was even mentioned in your qualitative interviews, I think. So you need to expound on that as well, depending on the cooperation between spouses. Women will have probably a larger share of the income. They will even receive guidance. Okay, in central Uganda, I think it is part of the norm where men allocate part of their land to their spouses, to their wives, to do their own farming, and they don't care about it. I see it in Rubanda as well. You mentioned that, which is very good. And then an important one that I was keen on was men receiving money or controlling the money got by women without them actually participating even in the production process, forcefully demanding the money. Now this is gender-based violence. I hope you are aware, which you are not mentioning here. Alcoholism, gender-based violence, maybe there was economic violence as well, which you need to talk about, okay, especially during the harvesting season. So that's on page 151. That is something you need to think about also in your results. The discussions, I am impressed. You used some up-to-date literature, 2023-2024. So they were good. But allow me to comment on your conclusions as I also come to an end. The theories that you used, I talked about this earlier, whether you needed to engage more with Naila Kabia, women economic empowerment, whether these two are adequate. I think you need to explain clearly in another section on contribution to theory, how important these theories were. VCT and outcome focused bargaining, this section is very important. As Kafureeka said, this is a PhD. I'm just reminding you. And an intersectional gender analysis across the three objectives would also have enriched a more deeper intersectional gender analysis. The gender was good, but the intersectionality aspects, if that is possible in your findings, marital status and gender, what was the interplay there, the occupation of these farmers. Okay, we are usually keen on that intersectional gender analysis, which would have made your work much, much better. Lastly, on the policy recommendations, maybe just to reiterate what I said earlier, you didn't engage a lot with these the land policies. You said you had the section and then you removed it. You are recommending that there is a need for gender responsive policies focused on equitable distribution of income and productive resources, particularly land. And this is why I asked, these policies on agriculture, did you read them? Did you analyze them? And based on Naila Kabia, if you had done that analysis, you would have concluded whether they are either gender blind, gender sensitive, gender responsive, or gender transformative, for you to come to this conclusion. Because you might be telling us business as usual. I hope you understand what I'm talking about. Yeah, you read critically these policies and identify those gaps. What exactly is in here for white potatoes as far as these women and men in Rwanda or in the country, even in other districts, Kapchora and where is concerned. In the interest of time, Chair, allow me to end there.
Thank you very much. Denis, please take a seat. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Bagonza. As I listened to you speak, two things were going on in my mind. One is when I enroll for PhD, my next PhD in gender, I want you to be my critical reader. Because you can't let the rat cross the road. Thank you very much. Colleagues, join me to applaud Dr. Bagonza for what he has done. So I said two things were going on in my mind. Either I want you to become my critical reader, or I want to come to you to teach how to be a critical reader, how to read the work critically. Indeed, you are not an opponent. You were a critical reader, and you stayed true to your word. Thank you, and thank you very much. I sincerely appreciate your effort, time taken to read this work page to page and not miss a comma, not miss a missing letter. So, Denis, you're very lucky. You're very, very lucky to have got somebody who dedicated all his time and passion to read your work closely and give you comments from opportunity to the candidate to respond, so that again it's not a critical engagement with each panelist. So may I invite Dr. Kamganga? Is that okay? All right, so I'm going to invite, you truly went to Institute of Gender and Development Studies, so I'm going to invite Dr. Julius Mugisa to come and engage and ask his questions. And as I check whether Prof is still online, because of the different time zones, she might have slept off. Okay, so I'll hand over the stage.
Thank you, Professor. Denis, is it still morning or afternoon? Good afternoon, Denis. Okay. I want to just look at this. We see whether in your presentation there is something you missed. The impact of agricultural market liberalization and commercialization on gender relations in Uganda's smallholder crop value chains. And you were very specific. You talked about the white potato, not so? Now the question here, what we are seeing is in the presentation, you did not separate how market liberalization affected the value chain. I will come to that. Differently from the commercialization. Because these are two reforms. These are two. So once you have and, it takes you to analysis. You get what I'm saying. Two, you talked about how market liberalization and commercialization impacted on gender relations in Uganda smallholder white potato crop value chain. And I did not mention about the value chains. As far as Irish crop growing or production is concerned, here, what one would have expected, how the gender relations changed when it came to input or like preparing the land. Did the commercialization and the market liberalization cause any change? I don't know whether you're getting it. Then when it came to production, when it came maybe to weeding, it came to harvesting and what, which relations changed? How did the gender relations change along the crop value chain? It is along the crop value chain. You did not look at the agricultural value chain. If it was agricultural value chain, you would have analyzed it like that. But if it is crop value chain, so along the Irish crop value chain, that is from either planting, preparing the seed, up to like distribution, marketing, and even the decision making on the outcome. I don't know whether that one is clear. 2. Can I have the objectives, sir? Very briefly, the objectives. Slide. Okay, the objectives. I got something here. When you see number 1, you see number 2. Let us look at number 3 and number 4. You are going to the impact of the reforms and the commercial oriented. Now here you change. You are moving from the reforms to commercial orientation. That's what I saw. That's what I'm seeing. Yet the title is very clear. Then you go to assessing the effects. The effects. Yet not here you are assessing the gender effects. Yet your study is on the gender relations. How the relations changed. How they were before and how they are currently. Have the gender relations changed? I think it's better you change here to the gender relations. How these affected the relations, the gender relations. You are not studying gender effects. You are looking at the gender relations. Did these reforms impact on the relations? Your study is not in the gender defects. Then last, because I'm not a critical reader. Last, I got surprised when it came to the presentation of the demographics. If you can take us briefly there, you will see. The p-values you put on the demographics were for what? You come back. There. What are those? Where were you getting the p-values? What were you relating the social demographics to? Because you had males, females, that is a description. So we only use these p-values in relation to the analytical variables. So which variable? So you are saying this is related to this or what? It is having a significant effect on what? What are these values for? Here, like here. When you read this, can you say that this has a significant effect, or this is having a significant impact on this or this? Because you can't use p-values when you are just presenting demographics. And these demographics are not findings. They are not findings. We just use those demographics in analysis. The variables. I stop there.
Thank you. After her, please, because she has to run to another meeting. Just a minute. Thank you.
Congratulations, Denis.
Thank you, Prof.
I'm just happy for you for having reached this far. And as my colleague has said, I'm not going to be critical reader also. I just want to ask you 2 questions, and it's up to you. You can reflect on them, but also if you want, you can answer them. So my question is actually, first of all, you have informed us that agricultural liberalization and commercialization has widened gender gaps. And in this regard, I want to ask you the question, what is your major contribution of your research to the rural women in the Rubanda district in relation to gender gap. Number two, your research also has clearly indicated that there have been changes as a result of commercialization and agricultural reforms. My question is, how would you describe new reforms of social relations that are emerging? Thank you.
Yeah, but I think because Dr. Ria really wanted to, yeah, so I think we should have him submit so that.
Just a few questions in relation to the same. And I often find this in natural science as opposed to social science. So, in terms of these particular social demographics, were not taken to the science to tell us how these shape and inform, or whether they have a bearing on the gender relations that your study focuses on. The second is how many stages of the white potato value chain do we have, and what was the focus in terms of what specific stage of the value chain did your study focus on? I'm just imagining you have potatoes or the farming practice as the beginning, but you have potato chips at the very end. So there are particular stages that take you to the potato chips. So for you, at what stage did the study focus on, and maybe why? In the presentation, you mentioned that women in polygamous marriages have become more dominant and they're happy with it. Should we advocate for polygamy? You said they become independent. I mean, the men are not there, so they have freedom and they do a lot of things. So do the women love polygamy in this area, and should we start to advocate it in Rubanda? Yes. And Uganda at large. Anyway, that is the critical reader, not mine. The second is something to do with the market liberalization. Maybe you would have given us a snapshot of how we got where we are. 1980, structure adjustment, then you have a specific strand when it comes to agriculture. Say, plan for modernization of agriculture, and maybe there are other discourses like Entandikwa and so many things. But these seem to be missing. Maybe that component needs to be added. The third one is you said women are owning much more land now, which rhymes with LandNet data, which speaks about 16%. And I was just thinking, the women who are owning land and that increment, don't we find them much more in urban areas than rural areas? Maybe the reverse is happening in rural areas. Maybe I need to, but the very last one, the data, most of the references I was trying to look through, maybe we need to update them to bring them to, 2024, 2025, and there's one slide where you have 2020, 2013, 2004, 2006, 2014, if you look at one of the slides. So updating to the very latest data that we have would be useful. And also you mentioned NDP3. We are now at NDP4, planning for the next NDP. Maybe we need to draw that particular attention, that particular section, and bring it much more closer to the current NDP phase that we are at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ria. So, Denis, maybe you should respond to some of those questions.
I will begin right away with him. I think under the NDP4 is mentioned under the significance, where I mentioned the parish development model pillar 1. I also mentioned principal objective 1 of NDP4. That is mentioned there. And on the issue of more commercialization efforts. I think this is included under chapter, it should be chapter 3. If you check the last section of chapter 3, you will find there a section on the most recent commercialization efforts, beginning with the plan for modernization of agriculture up to the present parish development model. That section is there and to the end of chapter 3. And women in polygamous marriages being happy. I talked about having autonomy in making some land-related decisions, because husbands are always they are scattered. They would say in their different households because of polygamy. So, I didn't go deep into asking whether these women actually were happy with their situation. The aim was, my focus was on whether they had space in making land-related decisions. And about how many stages of the value chain, if one checks under objective, not chapter 5, it is chapter 5, the table on shifts, mapping changes in gender roles. The table provides all the roles along the value chain, from input acquisition up to marketing. And in my recommendations, I said that the marketing node seemed to indicate some unique dynamics, and I recommended that attention is needed, because unlike other roles actually which are across the household, marketing goes beyond and far in the extra household environment. Marketing in distant places, bring potatoes to Kampala na Kasuru market and the rest. The issue of who is participating in that. I think I recommended that. And about not applying social demographic characteristics in the findings, I mentioned under women's inability or limitation to use mobile phones. I said it aligns. We can go there. I don't know exactly it is. Okay, that I mentioned that it aligns with the social demographic characteristics. So I mentioned that 0% of women actually had attained the formal education. I connected that issue of education to the inability to own mobile phones. And about for Professor Venembabazi, the contribution of the study to women in Rubanda district. The study has identified women's positions along the value chain. It has actually tried to indicate where they participate most, or their efforts are concentrated, and where they are denied chance to participate. And I believe that one, and also provided recommendations based on these findings. And I believe if policy implementers and others concerned focus on these recommendations, then that would make a great contribution and further shift in women's positions in Rwanda district. Dr. Julius, about liberalization and commercialization, that I should have focused on both of them. I mentioned that liberalization reforms were macro level, and that commercialization explains the logic of how their effects unfold on the ground. So there is no, I feel there is no way I would have brought liberalization itself being a macro level is a shift without focusing on commercial. So while I look at them as interconnected processes, what is close to the micro level is commercialization. And I think that's how, even in the introduction, that's how I put it. No mention of changing gender roles, where I didn't pick that one. Correctly, I will correct objective 4 on the gendered effects to gender relations, and about social demographic characteristics. The aim here was to establish whether this is here, whether there were significant changes not in actually in each element in the variable, for example, married women, and also across the categories under each variable. That's why I went into I put the P values. I think that's all I can address. Thank you very much.
Yes, environmental social scientist. Yes, so I thought that you need to strengthen the proper definition of a value chain, and that brings some sort of clumsiness within the thesis if you have not defined precisely. And two, trade liberalization and commercialization. They are not in your glossary as well, but I thought they are fundamental in enlightening learners like myself. Especially glossary usually is in my opinion even on the context, help to remove ambiguity of the reader on what you intend, especially if I have not read all the has key elements in it, and you could break down those key elements. Somebody coming from, I spend much time down something like commercialization. So commercialization, leaving it alone as a out of it. So what did I say? I thought you define the value chain, go specific, and I also join the critical thinker, the part that I have read on your thesis and others. The white story is not being told. So I wonder, why did you choose a white potato if you are not going to tell us why it is, what it is, and why we should take it as a case study and the like. Of course, I know you have mentioned something around that. I want to applaud you of categorize value chain in form of physical, digital, and group-led. I thought that was your contribution in there, the critical theory. I thought that at some point somebody should say his name. I remember in economics we have so many other phenomena attributed to scholars, even the Einstein's equation. So we can say Denis' physical value chains. So it is as a contribution of, because it's very important. I associate with the question, what was your contribution, new thing that you have done with respect to women in Rubanda who are involved in the new knowledge. So I don't open a Pandora box. From what I have answered here is that they are specifically leaders in this field. I have, but usually in economics we have you already said hypothesis, if I got you right, but in economics the literature also follows your objective, the objective set and how you are addressing the research questions as well. They're structured around the objective set, the research questions, and sometimes the hypothesis. The literature flows in that. But I also said your lecture was also comprehensively handling the theoretical framework and all that kind of stuff. The rest of the comments, we are colleagues down. I will reach out to you bilaterally. Accept my congratulations. And Madam Dean, thank you for giving me the...
Thank you very much, Dr. Kamganga. I would...
Hello.
Yes, it's good to hear you. Hello. We hear you well.
Yes,
And
okay, good. Okay. So yeah. Denis, congratulations. I have to also add my voice to my colleagues to congratulate you. I think this has been long overdue. I had actually even forgotten that I read your book. And so I want to congratulate you for reaching this stage and for the confidence that you've exhibited in presenting your work. I just have a few questions that I would want you to clarify. One of them is in your methodology, you talked about using sequential explanatory design. And I would want to know what informed your selection of the design and how useful was it in informing the way you made your conclusions about your study. The second question, which I would want to raise here, and I think I raised it in your book, is about your sampling. You talk about 115 households, and then as you presented, you talked about 201 respondents. And I was just wondering, within those households, how many people did you select per household? And what criteria did you use to select the members of the household to be part of your study? The third question is about WEI, Women's Empowerment Agriculture Index. And I think you're aware that it has now evolved to now, from WEI to AWEI and now ProWEI, but also ProWEI has also been refined. My concern is, why did you use WEI at analysis stage? Because WEI is an index. And an index is constructed after you've, collected data that cover the domains that are expected to be used to construct the index. So my wonder is, why this stage, and did your tools align with way principles. And then you said you used it at analysis stage. What domains of way did you consider? Because for you to be able to use way, you must have used the standardized tools, both the quantitative tool and the qualitative tools. And so, and then when you moved, after speaking about way in the analysis, you didn't even talk about it at a later stage. You didn't reflect how, you deployed it in your presentation of the findings. It is a standardized kind of index that has the ways in which you have, to use it to write from the tools up to the way you construct it and the way you do the analysis around the 5 domains of way. So the last thing that I would want, the other one was about ownership and control of phones, but I think that was already asked. But lastly, maybe to emphasize the importance of the social demographics in your work. Don't just throw them there, but just know that they are very important in informing the kind of experiences that women and especially women in their work as far as potato growing, potato selling, but also benefiting from the proceeds that come with potato growing. And so you need to consider to look at these social demographics and how they influence gender relations in potato growing. Thank you, and over to you.
Thank you very much, Prof. Denis will be given time to respond, but I want to pick questions from remaining panelists so that you respond to all in one. Okay, may I now invite Professor Helen to ask her question.
Thank you, Dean. Thank you, Dean. With your permission, allow me move with Chairman. Yes, and for avoidance of doubt, we are going to ask these questions together. But mine is very simple. If you were talking to my grandmother, what would you tell my grandmother about the white potato? I come from a potato culture. I don't know which white potato mean. Does size matter? White when it's not yet peeled, or white when it is peeled? I am missing a story because I'm very sure about the white potato, as economy. Is it that this culture women are supposed to cultivate and the others cultivate, and then what does that mean? Secondly, as the said, is it that you have told the world about it?
I pick it from the taxonomy of the white potatoes. Denis, first of all, congratulations. In your study, have you reflected on the types of the white potato implications? That is something you need to think about, because the about it. Three, you talk about pragmatism on page 60, and you are running away from constructivism presents. Have you reflected on your topic, the impact as a long term, and whereas pragmatism deals with what is present, what works now, and it doesn't look at even the consequences in future. It looks at the present situation, what works today. Whether it works in future or not, that's a different matter, but it's something that you need to think about. So, but also again, in you use pragmatism, and then later ahead you talk about, you go into the methods. You have the informants interviews, you have in-depth interviews. While you run away from constructivism of what you have written, but when you go deep, you raise these issues. I'm wondering why you didn't choose this and it impact that you chose to method. Compare this with your about this, whether you want to maintain a mixed method as a design, or you want to look at a case study in your topic, because these are two different designs and I don't see the marriage. This is something to think about. Then of course, on page 73 you developed open codes. You don't mention axial codes and selective codes, which happen to be the last when you are analyzing qualitative data. Think about integrating this and how you did this. Then lastly, like other members, the glossary needs to be improved. Agricultural liberalization is a catchword, and it would be important that you define it, and you also define the value chain. These are the cores you are looking at. Thank you very much. My comments, if you think, and on our talk. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Denis will give you time to respond to the questions, issues raised. Yes. Do what you can.
Thank you, Chair. I should begin with questions of actually, there are two types of designs here. The sequential experiment, and this gave me a total of 92 respondents, both husband and wife. In the remaining households, I was able to interview either spouse, husband or wife. Of course, a scholarship such as the dossier and Denis interviewing both spouses, but also underline that where one feels to access both can interview either. So the 92 respondents were husband and wife, while the 109 were either spouse, giving a total of 201 respondents. The question tool. It only guided me to pick the indicators which I based on to formulate my tools. It has women for the necessary for this study. Yeah, I think that's all. The rest I'm taking them as notes, which I have to look at and see put them in my work. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you very much. We the public. Professor Nelson to be away from Kayas. So if online audience, if anybody has a question for the candidate, please put up your hand so that you can ask. And of course, if the internet connectivity will allow, or you can send, yeah, you can actually send in text messages if you're not able to, if you're not in the chat, you can post in the chat. Professor Mrindra, yes, Professor Tanga, good afternoon. Please unmute yourself. Unmute. Okay, okay, thank you.
Yeah, good afternoon, Dr. Pamela.
Good afternoon, Prof.
I am enjoying the presentation and the interactions, so I don't have any issue to raise yet. I'm happy with what is going on. Knowledge is being produced.
Oh, thank you very much. Okay, all right. So, Farouk, you want to tell me, should we step out? I think. Okay, but okay. So there is, let me just read this. Congratulations, Denis. I have a small question about the woman who claimed to avoid mobile phones so as not to destroy their marriages. Did you get to find out whether they were financially independent? Otherwise, the reason of protecting marriages might have been their consolation reason, when in actual sense, they were too poor to own a mobile phone. This is coming from... okay, so this is coming from Priscilla Asamira online. Okay, thank you, Priscilla, for that comment. Denis? He's checking them from here. I think that's... Okay. Okay, there are more congratulatory messages. Okay. So, Farouk, who moves? Should the panelists move? Should the audience move? Because we are about... Denis, how do you feel? You must. Please, more water for Denis. and oh, there's actually butter here for Denis. Okay. Colleagues, good afternoon. I want, first of all, to thank all of you for staying with us. This thing takes a lot of time. It's a PhD, we are told. So, not pull him down, but permanent head damage. So, thank you very much for staying with us for this long. Our colleagues here physically and the audience online. Denis, you worked very well, and of course, it's good news. Many congratulations. So the waiting was worth it. It's very good work. The panel is very impressed. I know we came back and my colleagues were talking, and with the supervisor talking, and you'd think maybe they have not agreed. Why are they still debating even as they get in here? But it was just a continuation of the conversation. So of course you'll have comments to address, and here we follow the university guidelines that give us up to 3 months. But I hope that you don't need all the 3 months to address the comments, because from answering the questions here, it's clear it's your work, you know your work, and you just need to make a few things more clear, or maybe to rearrange here and there. So for this, as you revise, you'll work with your supervisors, but Dr. Dick Kamganga will oversee the revisions. And so without a letter from Dr. Dick Kamganga, the directorate will not accept your submissions when they come. Please make sure that after you've worked with your supervisors, you share your work with Dr. Kamganga to confirm that indeed. So you have the compliance report signed by your supervisors, but also you have a letter from the overseer saying, yes, the candidate has addressed the comments to my satisfaction. And because I've been keeping all of you here for very many hours, I beg not to read out the comments for all of you. The candidate will get the comments from Secretariat so that he's able to address the comments.